My name is Sam Dunn, and this is me in 1986. Banger, rocker, skid, call me what you want. I'm a metalhead, and I'm proud. At 19, I went to university. And since metal studies wasn't on the curriculum, I decided to major in anthropology. Anthropology is the study of human cultures, but there's always been one culture that I've really wanted to study: heavy metal.
So what we want to understand is what exactly was the relationship between these two styles of music.
I feel like I'm finally talking to somebody who actually knows what I'm talking about.
I enjoyed that. You're good.
Thank you so much. I love interviews like this.
Happy New Year and welcome back to Lockhorns, Banger TV's weekly metal debate show. 2016 was a fantastic year for us at Lockhorns and for metal, and so we are happy to plunge into another year. For those of you who haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to our channel and help us get to the 100,000 mark this year. And just a reminder that now there's a new and improved time for Lockhorns, 4 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday. Well, we're kicking off 2017 with something a little bit different. We are doing an Ask Me Anything, an AMA with me. That's right. That's where we're starting, folks. And so a lot of you have been asking questions leading up to today's show about me and all things metal. And to help me get through this fun yet possibly partly torturous task is Lisa Lattisour. Hi, Lisa. We'll shake hands.
Glad to be here, as always.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Sitting by my side for a change, which is nice.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get through as many of the questions in the next 30, 40 minutes or so. Cool. And I encourage people to ask us anything. We have a lot of good questions that have come through already through Facebook and through the chat. You want to talk about episodes of Lockhorns that you're still raging about? You need to get something off your chest, maybe? We'll take all your questions. I'm going to just start with two things you don't need to answer, because I'm going to answer them. They're super simple, which is yes, Sam is married, and no, he's not cutting his hair anytime soon.
No, that's not the plan.
He's going to be the last banger.
Although I did cut my goatee, I realized after watching that Headbanger's Journey sequence. Glad the kind of ginger goatee is gone. But anyway, yeah, the hair stain.
Time and place for everything.
Exactly.
Just like some of these bands.
That's right. That's right.
People want to know why this one's right in the middle.
Yeah, why did we put Poison in the middle? Not exactly sure. We didn't curate the board quite closely enough. But yeah, anyway.
So here we go.
Yeah, let's do this. Well, I guess tradition at Lockhorns is we give a shout out to everyone that is joining in for the live stream. So for those of you watching this on the YouTube channel, this is a live stream show. Here we go. Texas, Florida, Virginia, New York, Arizona, California, North Carolina, Nebraska, maybe a first time, Newfoundland, Halifax, Mount Forest, Ontario, love that neck of the woods, and Parkdale, Toronto, just down the road. And beyond that, internationally, we've got Hungary, Belgium, Finland, Italy, Croatia, the Netherlands, Bergen, Norway, love that place, the UK, Australia, and of course our Lockhorns regulars joining from Portugal, Germany, Brazil, and Sweden. So it's international as always.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's watching, but we got a great photo sent in to us over the holidays. We want to give a special shout out to this guy.
Nice shirt, nice pint.
John Roach, Newfoundland. Cheers.
Thanks for donning the gear. It's looking good. Banger Film shirts available now.
How's it sound out there, guys? That's our New Year's resolution here on Lockhorns, actually.
We want to make sure that everything sounds good. We're checking the board. I think we're okay.
So far, so good. Well, they'll let us know.
They will.
They always do.
They will. Okay, so what do we do now?
Well, I'm going to ask you some questions.
All right.
On behalf of some people. We'll softball you. We'll give you a real softball.
Go easy.
To start, Eli Unger wants to know, what music were you into before you got into heavy metal? And then how did you discover metal?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think, well, first of all, the first music I got into was my parents' music. I think I was pretty lucky. I had parents that listened, I think, to pretty cool music. Hendrix, Beatles, the Kinks, a lot of Bob Marley, pretty wide range, a lot of like international and world music as well. Then of course got into like whatever was on the radio at that time. And you know, I was born in '74, so I was an adolescent in the '80s. So it was like Michael Jackson, Cyndi Lauper, all of the pop stuff that was on radio and of course on music videos. And then it was when I was introduced to bands like Rat, Twisted Sister, Motley Crue, the metal bands that were getting a lot of music video play, Van Halen with 1984. And that was kind of the beginning, I guess, my exposure to metal, or at least popular metal. And then from there, I got the bug and I started to dig in deeper. I had some friends that were a little bit older than me, which, you know, I didn't have a big brother, so I had some friends that were a little bit older than me. They exposed me to like Maiden, Metallica, Slayer, and then it was just, I got really into the whole Florida death metal thing, everything that was coming out of Sweden in the late 80s, early 90s. I guess I'm pretty lucky. Like I was in my mid-teens when extreme metal was basically born. And so inevitably it's carved into my flesh forevermore. So it's kind of how it happened.
It's true.
It definitely is.
Here's one from Wessel Broikus. I'm sorry, Wessel. I'm terrible with foreign names. How has your relationship to the genre changed since you were a teenager? Has your appreciation of metal ever wavered? Is your devotion just as strong? How has metal continued to play a role in your life?
Yeah. Good question. I mean, basically from the age of 12-ish till 16-ish, it was all metal all the time. And I was a bass player, and so I was into playing music. And it did get to a point sort of in the, I guess, the early 90s. I started to get a little bit tired of metal, I think more from a playing perspective. And so I discovered everything from funk to fusion to jazz. I got really into old school like funk, like Sly and the Family Stone and the Meters, and then progressed into discovering like the original, 50s and 60s jazz musicians and Miles Davis, Coltrane, and on, and a lot of bass players like Jacko and Dave Holland, and on and on. So it did waver there for a bit, but I never strayed too far away from the hearth, so to speak, and came back to the music pretty heavily in, I guess, the mid to late 90s, and it's really dominated my life since then. So I hope that answers the question, but I think for me, I guess what I've learned is I think people that get into metal for strictly the reason of rebellion, I think that was always an element for every young metalhead. My experience is that those are the people that have grown out of it. I think what you find in metal is something more than that, the musicianship, the power of the music, the imagery, the language, the poetry, whatever, the aesthetic. I think if your interest goes deeper, I find that, like myself and many others, it never really goes away. So I continue to love metal.
Making a documentary and starting a company about it also doesn't hurt, right?
Right.
Like when I wrote my book about goth, all of a sudden I was like way more into it after years of caring less.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, I mean, I think doing the documentary sort of certainly forced me to look at metal in a way I hadn't done in the past. I'd studied anthropology and then had grown up listening to metal music and never really imagined that those could be brought together. And I never forget the day that Scott and I were talking about Headbanger's Journey is like, why don't this be about you? And I was like sort of terrified at the concept of that and never conceived that those two worlds could come together. But yeah, to your question, I mean, certainly doing a documentary on metal and now several documentaries on metal, it did rather than sort of exhaust my interest in the music, I think it actually deepened my interest in the music because it forced me to look at it in a different light.
So this question I know has come up a lot, and I don't know if your answer is the same as it's always been, but Jesse Morgan wants to know what was your favorite interview?
Yeah.
Which might be easy. And
Right.
then the worst interview. Is there anyone you met that you wished you hadn't because they weren't what you expected or hoped for?
Right. Well, the first part's easy. I think, Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden on the stage of Hammersmith when we did Headbanger's Journey remains sort of a real one of my most memorable experiences. Because Maiden's probably my all-time favorite band. And Bruce is such a fantastic speaker, and I think it's just I've always been proud that Bruce is an ambassador of our music, I guess, and so I admired him for that reason. Bad interviews, there's been a few duds along the way. Don't want to drag out too much dirty laundry, but
Come on, it's Lockhorns.
well, I guess 2004 or 5, interviewing Vince Neil for Headbanger's Journey. I was a big Motley Crue fan growing up, or at least the first 2 or 3 records, and interviewing him, I was a bit disappointed. He was forgetting names of albums and stuff like that, and I was just kind of like, I was hoping for more. Let's leave it at that. I should say also that more recently, Billy Corgan is a real standout too in terms of memorable, great interviews. When we interviewed him for the Rush film, never forget, we're speeding to his house, we're running out of time. I'd never met him before, and he lives north of Chicago, and it was one of our first interviews for the Rush film, and we got there, we had like a half an hour. We basically rolled the camera, and basically everything that came out of his mouth was like instantly usable. And he's like one of those interviews you're listening to him, and you're already editing it and seeing it in the film in your head. So
Well, a few people have asked worst interview, mayhem, says Dominic. I don't know. It turned out to be pretty good in the end, but in the moment.
I don't know if worst would be the right word. I'd say potentially most dangerous interview might be a good way to think of that one. At the time, it's funny, like it's been 10 years since that interview, and at the time it felt like the train was completely going off the rails, and it was a pretty volatile situation. I always talk about how there's a huge crowd of people behind us for that interview, and I never forget that. So it never really felt like it was just us. So I've always felt that interview, they were still kind of on stage. They just finished playing in front of, 50,000 people, and they hadn't played Vulcan for a long time, and it was a bit of a revenge gig against Vulcan. And so they just come off stage, and they were still fired up and pissed off, and here I am, this geeky Canadian metalhead, wanting to ask them a bunch of questions about churches burning, which had happened over 10 years ago. So understandably, they were a little peeved that I was, pulling some skeletons out of the closet. But anyway, we survived. We kissed and made up, me and Necro Butcher. David
Wadecki, what was the most shocking thing in King Diamond's house?
The fact that he was wearing sweatpants. Actually, it was the most shocking thing. Funny you'd ask, because that's an interesting question, because as I say in Metal Evolution, I grew up, there was this myth of King living in a castle only lit by candles somewhere in Denmark. And that was my image. We got to his house, suburban Dallas, I think it was, somewhere in Texas. He comes to the door in a backwards baseball hat and sweatpants, and I'm like, that's the most shocking thing you've ever done. And, apart from that, there were no coffins, there were no, satanic altars. There was some demons and some ghouls on the mantelpiece, but for sure, it was probably the sports sandals. And sweatpants,
We have a regular here, Arthur Felipe Castanha. And he wants to know, what country did you enjoy most visiting and making documentaries in?
Whoa, tough question. Been pretty lucky, been to a lot of different places for our films. the most stunningly beautiful place that I've been was when we went to Slovenia for Metal Camp, when we did the Power Metal episode for Metal Evolution. Would have been 2010. You know, I never thought much of Slovenia, and we got there, and I'm like, why haven't I been here before? One of the most beautiful valleys, like this metal festival that's on the side of this river on the eastern edge of the Alps, and just stunning. I mean, I think beyond that, most memorable would probably be going to China, you know, for global metal. You know, never imagined I'd go to China, let alone go there to explore the extreme metal scene in Beijing. And realize a place where I went where it felt really like I had gone somewhere very, very fundamentally different than where I had grown up, the places I had traveled, and haven't been back since. But I'm sure I've heard it's changed. But yeah.
Tell the story of your camera guy carrying the tripod in the golf bag.
Oh yeah, we got a geeky text question. Yeah.
It wasn't easy to film in China.
It wasn't easy to film in China. Yeah, we kind of faked our way in, I guess you could say. And our chosen method of carrying our tripod, this is for all the tech people there, was a golf bag. Because that was a way that we could kind of mask the fact that we were coming in
just a couple of Canadians golfing
on the Chinese extreme metal scene. So yeah, we carted the tripod around in a golf bag, and we took it up the wall of China, and there's photos to prove it. So pretty funny.
Quick question here from Ashish Kumar. Now I see how hard it is. You usually have to read out the names and get flack for it. I'm sorry. I'm trying.
It's the Trujillo syndrome, we call it.
Hey, some of us know how to say Trujillo.
Yeah, hey.
Hey.
May not be me, but some of us do.
But hopefully I know how to say Ashish Kumar. Whose filmmaking style has influenced you as a filmmaker?
That's interesting. I could sit here and say that there were like filmmakers that influenced, Scott and I to do what we do, but I think I'd be kind of making it up in hindsight, to be perfectly honest, because if we go back to 2004, like the whole music documentaries really hadn't become the industry it is now. I mean, it's a while back, and sure, we had Scorsese's The Last Waltz, and actually Some Kind of Monster had just come out, and I loved Paradise Lost by Berlinger and Sinofsky, but it almost felt like more like it was a bit of a Wild West. Like it was more like we always say it was more like what we didn't want to do. We didn't want to do Spinal Tap. We didn't want to do Decline of Western Civilization, because as much as that attempted to portray metal, it was almost one of the biggest motivations to do what we did. It was just like Paul Stanley's on a bed of half-naked women. Like, that's not the metal scene that I associate with and that really represents me. So since then, fallen in love with the genre of documentary filmmaking a lot more. But I think suffice to say, it was more guided by what we didn't want to do than what we wanted to do.
Right.
So,
little behind the scenes scoop. Sam likes to text about documentaries now with Lars.
It happens. It happens. Lars is a big doc fan, and yeah, I saw him. It's been a while. We saw each other when they were here for the great show at the Opera House, and I gotta hand it to Lars. Like, we're busy making our documentaries, and Lars is like asking me if I've seen all these music docs, and I'm like, I haven't seen that. He's like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm making documentaries. I don't have time to no, I haven't seen the Oasis film yet. Like, it just came out yesterday. So yeah, hats off to Lars. Like, he's a real, he keeps me on my toes. So we text about music docs from time to time. Yeah.
As the producer of Lockhorns, I would like to switch and talk about Lockhorns.
Right.
Because we have some questions about that. And I'm going to open it with the fiery one from Brian Maiden, who says, I want to know if Sam will ever respond to the video that Razorfist did, which, for those of you who don't remember, was a response to our Sexism in Metal panel that got a lot of attention. He was not happy with us, had a few things to say. Would we ever have him on the show?
Yeah, in fact, we invited him to be on the show because, you know, one of the criticisms of that show, and there were many, it was a real polarizing episode that we did, was that the discussion wasn't balanced. And I think that's a fair criticism. I think our approach was we wanted to represent the side of the argument that tends not to get heard. And I think that's a valid approach. We invited Razorfist on the show because I wanted to hear him and meet him and have a discussion with him in the room, and he declined. So, you know, the invitation stands to Razorfist, and, you know, Lisa and I have been talking, like, at some point we want to revisit that topic and approach it in a different way than we did the first time around, because, you know, although there was a lot of criticism of that episode, I still think it's an important thing to discuss. Partly because part of the mandate of Lockhorns is not always to just beat our heads over what qualifies as black and thrash metal. It's to talk about some bigger issues. And, you know, for some people, that's not what they want. It's fine. You don't have to watch that episode. But for us, we think it's important. It's part of our mandate. So, Razorfist, invitation stands.
Now, I'm going to ask, because I've had to answer this question because I monitor the Facebook as well. He said, sure, I'll do this by like video conferencing or something.
Right.
So why wouldn't you want to have him on like via Skype or something from home? Why did you want it to be face-to-face?
Well, I think that because it becomes a proper discussion, one. And I do think that there's a certain, I think people, I guess maybe it's a personal philosophy. I think you should stand up for what you believe in, and you should represent. I think that's what we do a lot of the time in our own work. We represent, and so I guess the core of my feeling was that I wanted him to properly represent his opinions and have him in the room, so it could be a proper dynamic discussion. Right. Yeah.
Mika Grossman, what is the future of Lockhorns? There can only be so many episodes about subgenres. Mm-hmm. Would you dive into, say, niche scenes like global ones outside of North America or Europe? Would we want to do episodes on like Chinese metal or something like that? Right. What do you think?
Well, I mean, the grand vision of Lockhorns would be that it is potentially in front of a studio audience or an audience of some description, or, you know, in a particular location. It's a show that would actually travel around the world, that we would do more episodes in different places, at festivals, on the road, whatever the case may be. So I think, you know, that's kind of the grand vision. In terms of the actual content and topics, absolutely. We've always talked about that we worry we're going to run out of metal subgenres, although it's shocking that it doesn't seem to be happening yet, because the tree just keeps on growing before our eyes. It's almost like once you talk about a genre, you realize that there are other genres that need to be addressed. So, like
Super Ba. Will there be an episode of Lockhorns on black gaze? And it's like, yes, eventually we will do black gaze.
Yeah, I think when it comes to genres of metal, like it's open season.
Robert is asking a white metal, Christian metal. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Like,
yep, absolutely. I mean, that to my earlier point, like, absolutely, we want to do that. But I think just as important, like, I would like actually hear feedback from everyone, like what kind of shows would you like to see on Lockhorns that aren't genre debates? Like what other things should we be talking about? Like what's important? You know, what matters to metal fans?
Regular Nick Ottaviano.
Here he is.
I finally get to say it. What bands did you find surprisingly enjoyable from doing Lockhorns episodes on genres that you're not normally listening to or not normally into?
Right.
Discoveries.
Yeah, I mean, I think that question applies both to Lockhorns and Overkill Reviews too, because certainly since we've been doing like weekly programming on metal, I'm thankfully forced to stay more up to speed than what I have been in the past, because documentaries take a very long time and they're very immersive and they're about a very specific topic. So often I don't have the time or can't create the time to follow along. So, Insomnium, I really like the Insomnium record. You know, a lot of people talked about that as one of their favorites of last year, and you know, I find it's a bit of a grower. I've been listening to that record a lot, and there's others, but you know, that's the one that comes to mind for me.
There's a lot of people saying, let's do Christian metal.
Right? Yeah, I think it's a great topic because, you know, the stereotype is that metal is anti-Christian or anti-religious, anti-organized religion anyway. So I think it would be really interesting to hear from people about how metal music can express their views of Christianity. I think that's absolutely up for grabs.
If you are an expert, if you're in a Christian metal band, you cover this stuff, you live in the GTA, get at us. We need an expert. We'll do a show.
We should call the show Up for Grabs, but it's not nearly as metal as Lockhorns.
No. Another regular. We're going to try and get to our regulars today. In particular, this question comes up a lot.
Horror Master.
Today, it's from Horror Master. Will you be bringing back more episodes of Metal Evolution? Can you talk about why that was only one season?
Yeah.
Since we know there are so many genres.
Well, the quick answer is we want to do more Metal Evolution. We have, you know, way back when we did it, and it came out in 2011. We had several more episodes planned because our primary financial backer of the show was VH1 in the US. VH1 wasn't interested in continuing the show. It did very well. It was very popular. Did well internationally too. And I, you know, now that you asking that question now, especially after doing all these Lockhorns episodes, it's like, yes, like, and time has passed too. You know, it's now 6-7 years since that show. Like, I think, you know, doing episodes on some of the extreme metal genres, more extreme metal genres rather than just extreme metal, would be fantastic. I mean, it comes down to you know, where it can be shown and how it's going to be financed, and you know, we're always working on that. So the short answer is, yeah, of course we want to do more Metal Evolution. Yeah. Stay tuned.
Will we be doing more Metal Evolution albums? Andres Castillo has asked. He's really liked the At the Gates. He found it entertaining and informative, as did I.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a similar answer to the Metal Evolution series proper. Yes, we want to. I'm glad you like the At the Gates episode. As I say in that episode, it's an album and a band that's a big love of mine, and we certainly have plans to do more episodes. I think that the main reason why we haven't done more, at least at this stage, is that we are finding, you know, a greater viewership with some of the other things that we're doing. And so I think it's about finding a way to make those projects work financially, because obviously, you know, doing those episodes, doing those Metal Evolutions on specific albums take a lot more time, energy, and money than doing a Lockhorns episodes. So it's something we haven't planned, and you know, really the goal of Banger TV is to grow it to the point, and maybe we'll get to this, where it's a subscription channel where we actually have our own metal channel, and at that point we imagine that there'll be more opportunities to do Metal Evolution albums.
A bunch of people also asked this question on the regular, including Brent Cosina. Can you give us an update about Satan Lives, and if that will ever be available in the United States?
Yeah. The Satan Lives, the dark, the dark,
the documentary from hell,
underworld child of the Banger Films catalog. What was the goal? Well, the goal basically in that film is to focus on the impact of the devil in popular culture. It's not a film that's about religion per se or about theology. It's more about how Satanism has impacted music, media, film and television, really how the devil is being used as a device to shock, to cause fear, or in the case of a lot of metal, to celebrate. I think that's what we found fascinating about the character or the force or the idea of Satan, is that it can represent many different things. In terms of whether you're going to see it in the US, we're working on it. It was, it was a difficult film for us in the sense that it was very different than everything we'd done in the past, which has been music-based. It was our first and still only non-music related film. Proud of it, and I think it's an interesting film, but it was a little bit more difficult to market, I guess, is the crux of it than the music stuff we've done.
But if you live in Canada, you can watch it on iTunes and other video-on-demand services. You can find it in Canada.
Yep.
Satan Lives.
Yep.
Daniel warns.
Yes.
Wants to know.
What is he warning me of?
Nothing. He wants to know which musician or group would you most like to do a documentary about?
Oh my goodness. The list is pretty long.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, in Banger we say, a documentary a day. Like every day we walk into this building and someone says we should do a documentary about this person or this idea or this moment. But when it comes to metal, what I think is still quite surprising is how many legendary artists have not had major feature docs done on their career. I think the obvious one, and my holy grail, if you will, would be Black Sabbath, without question. But you keep moving forward, and is Van Halen, Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin even. I mean, Song Remains the Same as a documentary, but it's not really the story of Led Zeppelin. AC/DC. The list is pretty mammoth when you think of it. So I still have my dream list that I had 13 years ago when we started Banger. So we're just going to keep knocking on those doors.
A lot of questions about your opinion on the state of metal. Lots of quick questions about your opinions about metal. I like this one from Wessel or Vessel.
Yeah.
What's the most disappointed you've ever been with a favorite band changing their style? Metallica, Opeth, Sepultura, Morbid Angel, Dissection, In Flames, just a couple of suggestions.
Yeah, not a leading question at all. Well, I'm glad you put the list up in front of me, because it might have been difficult for me to think of it. But In Flames, I think, for me, speaking candidly, is a band that doesn't have the power and impact and richness that I felt they once had with albums like Clayman. Actually, Route to Remain is one of my favorite, might even be my favorite In Flames record. I know it's Horacle and Clayman that tend to get credited as being the real big ones from their early catalog. So I think if there's a jump the shark in metal, for me, it would be In Flames.
You'll notice that he didn't review that record on Overkill. He passed that to poor Bradley.
Yeah, and it's hard, and it said this, it's even in the Metallica review for Hardwired, which, I've made some friends and enemies over. The harder ones to review are the bands that are actually really the closest to you or you've been listening to for the longest time, because there's always that gravitational pull, which is like you want to like the record. And it's almost like you're doing everything you can to love it, because you want that feeling of loving another record by that band. And then when it doesn't come, it's particularly hard to take. Shed a tear on Lockhorns AMA.
All right, some things hopefully not as loaded, but some bigger questions about the state of metal. Ryan Beard, do you think that heavy metal will ever have another moment of popularity like it did 3 decades ago?
Right.
Or is the mainstream media's perception that it isn't cool going to keep it in the underground?
Well, this is an enormous question. In fact, this should be the topic of a Lockhorns episode. It's probably one of the bigger questions looming for metal and music in general. I don't know. I think not having a crystal ball, I can't imagine it having the same kind of ubiquity, to use a fancy word, as it did in the 80s. And that's it's the result of two things. I mean, the industry has changed so immensely that the riches are far more disparate and scattered than they used to be. That's one. Two, hip-hop rules the world. And that shows absolutely no sign of changing. Related to this, often the question comes up, when Maiden and Metallica and, Sabbath and all the legends of the 70s and 80s hang it up, what's going to happen, and I think that the future of metal, it looks very different than its past. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, because there's no shortage of good music out there. Just because bands aren't filling stadiums doesn't mean there isn't good music. And I would make the argument that most of us, certainly me, didn't fall in love with metal because it was filling stadiums. We fell in love with metal because we liked the music and the impact and the power that it had. So now, if I was a music manager, I would have probably a very different perspective on this, but I'm not a music manager. We are documentarians of music. So for me, I don't bemoan the fact that there may not be another giant metal stadium band, but I could be. If I'm proven wrong, I will be the happiest instance in which I've ever been proven wrong. So let's see what happens.
All right, I'm going to find it because I liked this question. You had mentioned Black Sabbath earlier.
Yeah.
And Hisham X, what are your thoughts on Black Sabbath stopping their touring career? How will the metal world look like when we lose one of the greats? And I would expand that to many of the greats.
Sure.
We've talked about this in the office. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, we talk about this a lot. It's always saddening to see a legend go, of course. This is Black Sabbath is a band of immense importance beyond just metal. They defined a sound, they crystallized a sound that gave birth. It's the reason why we're all here. Sabbath and Wagner are the reasons why we are here. However, there's a big part of me that feels like we need to look forward, because I do think that given that those legendary bands take up so much space, if you will, in our imaginations, on magazine pages, etc., that it tends to push out, a lot of bands that, frankly, I think are making brilliant music. And so,
Oliver,
we're standing on the cusp of a big turn, but I think that it's an opportunity for the sun to shine on some bands that I think really deserve it.
Well, Oliver Grenace, is pointing out Mastodon might be the next stadium band.
Yeah, well, I mean,
there's a few.
Stadiums or not, great band, fantastic songwriting, great lyrics, great concepts, tour like fucking mad. They're great at what they do. Sure, bring it on. I was there in the stadium when they opened for Judas Priest, and I love my Priest, but I was mostly there to see Mastodon because I think they're a fantastic band. So, sure, Mastodon filling stadiums, I'll take it.
I'm going to answer Thrash Maniac 99, who has been furiously cutting and pasting this answer over and over again. And I know you're a regular, so we'll both answer this one. He's like, should we have a fan section on Lockhorns where we can take fan calls by Skype or whatever, and they can have their choice? And I would say that's the entire chat.
Right.
Right? Like, that's what the show is.
2.0 call in. Radio request hour. That's what I did when I was a teenager.
So I would say no. We're just going to keep encouraging you to get on the chat and give us your opinions. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Oliver. I made it. I didn't offend anyone.
Yeah.
So we're coming down to probably the last 10 minutes of the segment.
All right.
So I'm going to pick some questions that are a little bit rapid fire for you.
No, let's
right?
go. Okay, it's
so
hard for me.
There'll be quick answers,
Yeah.
or you can pass.
Copy.
All right.
Yeah.
Maddie Kowalko from Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
Do you have some favorite album covers?
Black Sabbath. Probably one of the most harrowing images that's ever been put onto paper, card. Slayer, Rain and Blood, for the same reason. Sort of an abstract, not hitting anything right on the nose. It's like, this really is creepy, and I don't know why. Yeah, those are two faves.
When you're young, you're stuck on a desert island. You
shit.
can only take the discography of one band.
Aha.
Yes.
Maiden. Easy. Next.
Do you have a favorite metal band logo, Glenn Levertu?
It's not Poison. Favorite metal band logo. Oh, I didn't do my homework on this one. Morbid Angel. Partly because I think Morbid Angel is one of the best band names ever because of the juxtaposition. Like Morbid Angel. That's such a great image. And I remember I used to make homemade stickers and put them on my bass. And my favorite one was the Morbid Angel one. And I had it. You couldn't get back, there was no Morbid Angel back patch on Vancouver Island in 1988. So me and my friend did the best job we could to put it in Sharpie on the back of my jean jacket. So there you go, Morbid Angel.
I feel like
is today's answer.
You're way cooler than me. I think mine was a Billy Idol logo on in my Sharpie
No
in my
judgment
days.
passed.
In my days. Ricky Phillips, 3 favorite death metal albums of all time.
Death Leprosy, Morbid Angel, Altars of Madness, and Entombed Left Hand Path. That's the speed response. There's more. Don't get me started. Let's go on.
Medulla Diablongota.
Yes.
Favorite riff.
What? Favorite riff? Come on. Here we go. Low-hanging fruit. I'm a bass player. The bass break in the midsection of Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Yeah. Probably played or tried to play that as many times as manageable as a teenager.
Follow-up question. JB, favorite albums from a bass player point of view?
Favorite albums? These are good questions. Favorite albums from a bass player point of view? I'd have to say Power Slave. I'd have to say Hemisphere's Farewell to Kings, Rush, and what else? I'm drawing a blank.
All right,
Next
topic. AC/DC, psoriasis, Axl and AC/DC. Thoughts?
If the shoe fits, sure.
Next
How's that
question.
for a definitive answer?
Next question. Racer 24T, best live band you've ever seen?
Gonna come across as a one-trick pony. I would say Maiden, partly because I've seen them so many times. I think it's got to be Maiden. Yeah.
Mastodon rocks. A lot of people have asked this. Mastodon rocks included favorite Opeth album.
That's hard. That's hard. That's really, really hard because they're one of those bands that I like everything they've done, even though some of it's heavier, some of it's lighter. I mean, like many, I think Blackwater Park, Ghost Reveries, I really liked because they were starting to make that transition to a more proggy sound, but they still had the death metal. Really like Ghost Reveries.
Horror Master, who do you think are the current metal gods? I assume he means male vocalists or vocalists in general. I don't know. Frontmen? Metal gods? Who's the next Rob Halford?
Who's the next?
I don't know.
Rob Halford. Who's the next Rob Halford?
Like when he retires.
Yeah. Oh man, these are hard. You know, I don't know if he's a metal god because it's like a certain image. I think Randy Blythe of Lamb of God is one of the best frontmen around. I think his lyrics are fantastic. He's smart. He's fucking rips it on stage. Love the guy. Randy. Like Randy a lot.
All right, we're coming down to the last 5 minutes. JZB, why do you never review power metal albums on Overkill?
Not a big fan of power metal would be the short answer, I guess. Maybe we should bring in Martin Popoff for some guest reviews.
Heavy Metal Heretic, Mayhem is playing the entire De Mysterious Dom Satana. Will you be there?
Yes.
What are you most excited about for 2017? There's a bunch of people have asked that.
Yeah. I'm actually really excited about the Creator record. I haven't heard it yet. I think partly because last year was such a big year for thrash and Sodom. We had Destruction, and almost all the Bay Area bands. So Creator, I think, I've been a big fan of Creator for a long time.
This is a hard one. You might have to, think about it for a minute. But our friend Connell from Germany wants to know, are you that guy?
I am that guy. If ever you see me and yes, I am that guy. Still that guy.
Connell is in Welcome to Vulcan Vr. Do you want to tell people about that?
Yeah, we're putting together the first ever heavy metal documentary in virtual reality, which we shot at Vulcan last year. It's like a 25-minute documentary told through the perspective of 4 fans who are at Vulcan. Basically, if you've never been to Vulcan, it's going to be the closest thing to feeling like you're there. And for people who have been before, it's a way to experience it in a whole different way. So that'll be coming out this year.
Speaking of festivals, as we get close to the clock, the final bell ringing, Bob Whitmer, have you ever considered doing a doc on 70,000 Tons of Metal cruise or just attending? We'd love to see you there.
Yeah, I'd love to go. Never been able to get there yet. I don't know about a doc just on that. That would take some thought, but certainly I think for Banger TV doing a feature of some kind on the cruise would be awesome. I want to qualify an earlier comment, just to balance things out, so I'm not just so Maiden centric. Meshuggah in Iceland was one of the best live shows I've seen in a long time. That is a fucking great live band, completely different, of course, than Maiden. But man, that's some serious metal.
One day in the future, we may unearth from the vault Sam shirtless in the Meshuggah pit footage.
What?
But right now, it's under wraps.
The sad thing is, scary thing is, I don't remember that happening.
I got a text from you that just said, "I'm in the vortex," and then you were gone.
Yeah, I don't know if I was shirtless, but certainly my eyes were rolled back into my head on a few occasions. That's for sure. Yeah.
All right, 2 left. Guitar Bro, 221. Who's the funniest person you've ever interviewed?
Wow. Funniest person I've ever interviewed. Boy, I'm blanking. Devin Townsend. Thank you, Craig. Devin is hilarious. Yeah, just interviewed him last year, actually, for the first time. And yeah, he makes me laugh for sure. Yeah. Good choice, Craig. Thanks, buddy.
We'll go out with something a little substantial. Dan with a cunning plan. In your opinion, is rebellion still a part of metal? So many bands sound the same. They don't really push any boundaries. Everyone now expects guttural vocals and breakdowns, etc. Is rebellion still part of heavy metal?
Good question. I might be the wrong person to ask. I think you should ask the 14-year-old version of me, because I think that rebellion can mean a lot of different things, you know, and I think that we all have our own reasons for gravitating to metal. I mean, metal may not represent sort of the societal wide rebellion that it wants to exist, you know, happened when Tipper Gore was, railing against the music, and Judas Priest getting accused of like inspiring kids to do terrible things. But I think sort of on a like the level of like individual politics, if you will, and on the level of like it having like a very meaningful personal revolution, transformation. Absolutely, I don't think that'll ever change. Thanks, Lisa Lattisour.
That's what usually happens at the end, right?
We shake hands.
You lean over and go, thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
My pleasure.
There are so many questions. We could do this again.
Right.
So I hope you don't mind. But
I'm going to get to
I
that.
may book you again.
I'm going to get to that third most important bass metal album very shortly. We're going to cut, and I'm going to think of it in a moment. It's haunting me. It might be Master of Puppets, but I think there's something better out there that I will remember. Anyway, I digress.
You're off the hot seat. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
We got a bunch of stuff next week.
What are we doing next week? I don't have my script.
You
in front of
don't?
me.
Well, let's bring it up for the people.
I know what it is. It's Sepultura Week. How could I possibly forget? There's no script for that. You just need one word. We are doing a whole bunch of stuff on Sepultura. I'm going to be reviewing the new record, and we're gonna get into a sticky debate around the various albums and eras of Sepultura. You know, this is a band that's been around for a long time and have gone through a lot of changes, and there's a lot of controversy and politics that surround this band. So it just seems we need to dig into Sepultura, mostly because they kill, and Beneath the Remains is the best record they've ever done.
Don't spoil it! Don't spoil it! So this actually came from a suggestion when we asked people what they wanted for 2017.
Right.
Someone said, why don't you do Lockhorns on specific bands? And we said, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's start with a band that people like to talk about and debate. So we'll be here next week doing that.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. I think that's it. Thanks for joining us. See you next time, 4 p.m. Eastern. Wednesday on Lockhorns.